So very happy to have Evelina Tapia here today to do a presentation about user experience and user interface. Evelina's connection to our community is that she was a postdoc at the Beckman Institute, where I've recently learned that all smart people come from the Beckman Institute. So if you have any connection to the Beckman Institute, or if you ever worked at the Beckman Institute, raise your hand. Okay, higher. I need to see how many. Okay, all right. Well, anyway. I also used to work at the Beckman Institute, and I'm not making that up either. So anyway, it's very exciting for us. So Evelina did her postdoc there, and she still has a fondness for this community and was coming back into town and really wanted to share what she has learned in her professional career with us. So lucky us. So we are very grateful to her for coming and delivering us this talk today. So please join me in giving a very warm Research Park welcome to Evelina.
Thank you for the welcome, and thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to visit. I am blown away by how many of you are here, so awesome. First of all, what I'm going to talk about today are a lot of things. Hopefully each one of you, coming from a very different background and doing many different things, will learn something new and interesting. I want to talk briefly about who I am and what I do, and also want to gauge who is who in the audience in terms of your experience and what you're working in right now. So I'll ask about that. I'm going to stand behind the podium so that way I don't have to break my head, but I'll tell you kind of what user experience is and why it matters, why all this fuss about UX. What are the misconceptions about user experience that a lot of new businesses or very old and established businesses have? How, when, and why to bring user experience into your business if you haven't done so already, and how to find the right people for the right tasks when you need that kind of expertise. And that especially applies to startups who don't have a lot of resources to bring on, let's say, a full-time user experience person to their team. So I am my job title is user experience researcher or user researcher. And when people who are not familiar with this discipline or term ask me what I do, is I work with businesses and companies, and I help ensure that the existing technologies or the new technologies that are being built are intuitive, easy to learn, easy to use for a regular person in this world. And I'm really a bridge between the end users of the technology and people who create those technologies, so engineers and business owners. So I make sure that the communication between the two sides kind of makes sense, and I represent the user to the company. So as I'm talking throughout this hour, you will kind of get to see some of the things that I do. But I'm also curious to hear kind of, if you could just raise your hand so that I get an idea, how many startup people are in the audience and actually working there? Okay, and then developers? Anybody doing design? I'll show you what happens when the developers design later on. Anybody just kind of curious about UX and how you can get into the field? All right. Anybody else that I kind of didn't mention? They're just people, learning things, but anybody else? All right. So as I said, I think some of the things that I will cover will apply to every one of you, and I hope that you will be able to use it in the work that you're doing. So, but to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what is UX, because it's a buzzword that's being used a lot by a lot of informed and not so informed people. When I talk about UX, I talk about user experience. And Niels and Norman, who are the pioneers of this discipline and who have really made sure that it's something that a lot of companies talk about and invest in, they say that user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. And just to kind of give an example of that, we are having a user experience moment right now, kind of. Right, you're in this room, the AC may be too high or too low, you may be enjoying your food, you may not be enjoying your food, you may easily read what's on the screen, or you may not. The colleagues or your friends sitting at a table may smell funky or they may smell nice, and all of those elements will contribute to how you are feeling in this moment, like what is your experience right now. So when we talk about user experience, a lot of people are very limited to thinking, oh, you're talking about what a mobile app looks like or what a website looks like. But really, it's not about what something looks like. It's how are people feeling when they have to use that thing. And that thing doesn't have to be a website or a mobile app. It could be a service. So when I call Comcast and I have to complain for the 10th time that they messed up on my bill or that their service is really poor, my experience in those interactions is not very positive, right? Or, on the other hand, when I can schedule a call with Comcast and they call me back whenever an agent is available and I don't have to hold on the line, then I say, oh yeah, my experience is quite decent when I'm interacting in that environment. So when I talk about user experience, I will give examples from kind of software and mobile app design and user interfaces. So I'll come from that angle. But all of these principles that I covered today will apply for kind of customer service experience that companies may be investing in crafting. So it doesn't apply just to digital tools. It could apply to tangible things that people use, such as medical devices, and again, services that you may be providing as a business. So UX is not pretty-looking things, as I just said. And in order to understand user experience of the end users who are, again, participating in a service, using a website, calling customer service centers, walking into a store and shopping for things. In order to understand what their experience is, we have to understand those people, what their tasks are, what their goals are, what their attitudes are, what drives their behavior, what motivates them, what devices they use to get certain tasks done, what environment they are in, and so on. So as I'm talking about specific methods today, you'll get to see that there's much more in user experience than just what things look like. So, and just to push that point further, this is not what UX or user experience is. A lot of businesses think that UX is a modern-looking interface. So at a first glance, yeah, like this is kind of nice. It's a little bit futuristic. It has a nice balance of colors. The layout is pretty cool. There's some nice visual graphics. But we don't know whether this example of an interface would lead to a good or a bad user experience. If I'm an operator and I have to do a particular task and it takes me 20 clicks on this interface to get my task done, those 20 clicks may be quite frustrating. I don't even know by looking at this interface whether it's an intuitive interface for this person to use when they're trying to accomplish a specific task. So we cannot say that there's good user experience just because something looks modern or pretty and appealing to us visually. It is really about how are people feeling when they're interacting with a product or a service that is in front of them. Okay, so why is UX kind of a hot thing now, or why has it been a hot thing for a few years? So what is all this fuss? So user experience exists regardless of whether businesses actively invest in crafting that or if they don't. So Southwest, for example, their website and their service, they're very focused on delivering good user and good customer experience. It's very easy to book a flight. It's very easy to change a flight if you decide to cancel it. There are no cancellation fees. There are no hidden fees in terms of booking a regular flight to begin with. Their website and mobile app have always been kind of improving and made very easy and intuitive to use, and the ratings of how easy they are to use are very high. So Southwest takes a very proactive approach in making sure that user experience of their products and services is good. Microsoft, on the other hand, especially if we think it was like the early 90s and Microsoft Word or Excel, a lot of those interfaces are not or were not intuitive and easy to use for people. People had to go through a lot of training and be taught how to use interface elements and functionality of the software. So we could say that those examples would be not a very positive user experience. So some businesses will actively invest in crafting good and positive user experience, at least to some degree, because good user experience is good for business. So just some numbers to kind of back up that statement. If you have good user experience, your users or your customers will speak positively about your product and your service. And if people are speaking positively about your product and your service, they are promoting you to other people around you, so this is really advertising. But also, if you are a satisfied customer, like I'm a satisfied customer of Southwest, because they don't beat their customers, they beat their competitors' prices, they can monetize on me as a customer much more than if I were dissatisfied with their services or just kind of neutral about their services and products. Also, a lot of financial studies have been done on this as well. So companies that invest in user experience generate on average 37% growth, which I think is a pretty decent chunk of money. And the large companies that have stocks, over the last 10 years, those big companies that have invested in crafting good and positive user experiences for their customers and users, they have outperformed the S&P index by over 200%. So that's also showing you that this is a very smart business strategy. So on the other hand, if you don't actively try to craft good user experience, or you're not even kind of assessing whether you are delivering good user experience, that can be really bad for your business. So people will start talking negatively about your products and services if they are not user-friendly, not intuitive to use, if it takes them 15 minutes to do a task that should take a couple minutes. And that means you're going to lose users and customers, and that's eventually going to be not cool and not fun. So there's a lot of financial benefit to investing in user experience and delivering that as part of your services. But some companies, and especially a lot of startups, are very reluctant to consider that as a strategy. And there are several reasons for that, or several misconceptions that they have. So first, many companies think that user experience activities take a lot of precious time that I simply don't have in my roadmap or pre-launch plan to execute. And as I'll show you, user experience activities don't have to take a lot of time if you're smart about it. And some of them take just a few days, tops. Also, related to that is that user experience activities cost a lot of money. Oh, so I have to pay a bunch of people, I have to hire experts to help me with this, I have to, because it's going to take a lot of time for me to do this, it's going to burn much more money than I'm ready to spend. And again, I'll tell you that it doesn't cost a lot of money to get this done. And whatever money you spend will bring you much more in return later on. And then finally, another kind of misconception is that, well, I'm a startup, I have 3 developers and I really need to crank out a lot of code, and I don't have any money to hire another full-time person who does this kind of semi-important thing called user experience. And while a full-time person is kind of nice to have on your team, it's definitely not a requirement. And you can get a lot of work done in this user experience space by hiring people to help you on a contract basis and just get specific tasks done on a short time frame. So little expense and a lot of value, and you don't have to have a full-time person. All right, so what can you do? When should you do it? And how should you do it? If you decide that this is kind of a smart thing to do. So at a very high level, kind of the 4-step process of crafting and delivering a good user experience to your customers or users is first to understand what the current user experience is of whatever services or products you may be offering or you may be thinking of offering. Second step is designing new and improved user experience, because whatever you're doing, people will always have improvements that you could make on the service. As satisfied as you are at any given point in time, there's always something that could be done better. So you understand what the current user experience is, design a new experience, validate that user experience to make sure that it is the correct way to address the user's needs before you actually spend a lot of time developing it. you build, launch, release, and then repeat the same thing again. So I'll talk specifically about the first 3 steps and what you can do. So to understand the current user experience, the activities, and these are the user experience activities that you can do, are interviews, observations, some people call it ethnography studies or contextual inquiries. And the point here is that you don't just go and ask directly of your end users or your customers, hey, what do you like about this? What don't you like about this? What do you want me to build? Because people don't always know what they don't like. People may have a very limited idea of what is possible. And so this brings to mind Henry Ford's famous quote, who said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse. They would have never thought, oh, there's a possibility of a car that could take me from point A to point B, right? But by interviewing and observing people who are accomplishing specific tasks, you can learn a lot about what is intuitive for them, what is not intuitive for them, what their needs are, how they're using tools currently, how they may be multitasking with multiple different tools to get a specific task done. So for example, if you're planning a trip, one of the websites that I recently used, and I was really quite impressed with how they thought about this process, is bookings.com or booking.com. So you're booking a hotel, and in many cases, people make travel plans, and they say, well, I'm not sure if I will get to this particular place, so I may want to cancel my hotel, or I may want to switch my reservation. And in some places where you're getting deals on hotel prices, you have to pay the full price in advance, and there's no and you lose all the money that you pay in case you need to cancel your trip, or you have to pay extra cancellation fees, which is another expense. And sometimes if you make a reservation, you have a window of cancellation in which you won't get charged, but you always have to think in your head, oh, I have 3 days before I actually get there to cancel this, right? So this is kind of a stress and burden on the customer to figure out how to change and arrange their travel plans. And on bookings, one of the cool things that they have done is you make a reservation, you don't have to pay for anything up front if you don't want to, and then it will say, well, your trip is on April 1st, and if you want to cancel without any charge, you can cancel by, let's say, May 25th, and we won't charge you anything. So they have put that small piece of information up front for their customers to see, and it's very easy to see, kind of to reference and make make travel decisions accordingly. And they have figured those needs out by interviewing people, observing how they are making their travel arrangements and travel plans. For example, some of the customers would be filling out calendars and writing down, well, on this day I'm traveling, if I want to cancel my trip reservations, I need to do that by 5 days back, and they would kind of make these notes. They would use sticky pads and spend a lot of time planning the trip than what they would have liked to do, right? And so by seeing how people are making travel arrangements, this particular company was able to take those insights and simply add, a couple lines of code and a couple lines on the user interface and show people how they can plan their trip in an easier way. So understanding this current user experience and participating in interviews, observations, or contextual inquiries can take as few as several days. And in some cases, I will say, well, several days plus, a week plus. And the plus part really depends on the scope of the project and what you are trying to accomplish and what your goals are. If you are, building, let's say, a mobile app, kind of like Uber, to deliver, dog snacks to pets in your neighborhood, that's a very small kind of solution or small product that you're trying to build, right? You may design 5-6 screens, and you're trying to solve a very kind of small problem. How do I deliver treats to pet owners? But on the other hand, if you are trying to figure out what is the next big thing that my company can build and blow my customers away or blow the market away, you may need to spend much more time investigating what the current user experience of your customers are. So for instance, I worked on a project for Samsung, and they wanted to find out how older Americans, people 65 and above, use technology at home, how they get technology into their homes, what they find intuitive, what they don't find intuitive. Because they wanted to find out, is there anything that we can build for them and make for them and sell to them, to make more money? And so that kind of a problem took a research team of 8 people. We traveled across the country for 6 weeks, interviewed people in their homes, right? And that's a much larger research engagement and research activity because we're trying to solve a much larger problem, right, and answer a much larger question. But if I want to build a mobile app to deliver treats to pet owners in the area, that's a much smaller question that can be answered in several days of time. So these kinds of activities inquiring into what is the current user experience should be done in the early stages of product or service development, or when you're planning a major project, product release or major product change. So if you currently have something that's already launched and you're trying to improve on your service, you can run kind of user experience activities in parallel to ongoing development. And you can plan how to include the new things that you learn about your users into upcoming releases and upcoming stages of your product launch. So if you do these interviews and observations and contextual inquiries, the outcomes of those activities would be that you uncover new user needs. That always happens regardless of how well you know your customers. You validate known user needs and pain points. And then you can find opportunities for optimization and for improvement. And I can guarantee you that happens all the time. I work on projects for Fortune 500 clients, including, as I said, so Samsung, ExxonMobil, Schlumberger, but also for a lot of startups that are just trying to get a new product out. And even though the business owners really know what they're trying to do, they understand the market really well, when we do these kinds of interviews and observations, we learn new things that the business owners never, ever, ever knew. And that is kind of where the money is, the secret sauce. So, and the business value of this is that it ensures that your business, with whatever product or service that you're providing. So it ensures that you're really investing money and solving the correct problem for your user base. So the second step in kind of this high-level process is designing the new user experience. And the activities here would be creating an information architecture, creating high-fidelity wireframes, and applying visual design to interfaces that you may be building. And this will be like really focused on software, website, mobile app designs, but again, even if you're using, let's say, artificial intelligence as kind of your core service where you don't have user interfaces, all of these principles still apply to creating that digital experience. So for some of you, these terms may be very foreign, and I just want to show you some visual examples of what these concepts are. So information architecture is a diagram that looks kind of like this, and it's listing all the pages, all the sections of your website or your mobile app, and how they may be connected, how you would navigate from one to the next. So for example, in Gmail, when you log into Gmail, your main page is your inbox. But then from your inbox, you can read specific individual messages. You can compose a message. You can go to your sent folder and read messages that you have sent. You can look at your contacts. You can modify your contacts from that page. So an information architecture for Gmail would start with inbox, and then from inbox, I can go to all these different places. So it's really kind of, for the developers in the house, it's those kinds of decisions for on information architecture really impact how you structure your databases, where you store information, and how you would build out the navigation and how pages are connected in whatever product you're building. This is an example of a wireframe, and it also is part of the UX design step. And a wireframe is a layout and a visual representation of what page structure might look like and how information on a page would be laid out at a course level. So this is an example of a low fidelity wireframe. So we just have placeholders that are boxes that say, this is where we would show a picture, and this is where we would have buttons that take you to the next page or save information. This is where we would show text. This is where a person would select a date if they're entering a calendar entry. And then we can lay out these wireframes one after the next to show how people would move from page to page. So this is the second step after we create an information architecture of what is the structure of our product or service. And this is kind of visualizing all of that information. And then a high fidelity wireframe would be similar to this, except it would have much more visual detail. So you may see, instead of kind of boxes that have an X in the center, you would see an example of a photo that might be there or a video. Your buttons may become icons that designers would use, but still everything would be pretty much in grayscale. But the high fidelity wireframes then look much closer to what you end up in a final product. And then the final thing is, once you have high fidelity wireframes, then you would apply visual design to it. So that's where designers, visual designers, would make decisions about color palettes that they need to use. They would apply branding colors if product or service has a brand. And this is two examples. So you have the exact same wireframe, so the structure of the page is identical, but the visual treatment of that, what colors are used, and if there are shadows or gradients, differs. So designing new user experience can take anywhere from a week to more. So again, if you're designing a mobile app for dog treat delivery, that may be a few screens, and that can be done in a week. If you're designing Microsoft Word with all of the different states and windows and modals, that may take you multiple months and a large team of people to do that. And again, I want to emphasize, which I don't think I've said, design is really not just what it looks like, but how it works. How do I get a person from page A to page B in a way that is intuitive for them, that is easy to use, so that the user can just click, 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 I'm done, and I get my task completed. So designers make a lot of those choices and decisions. Of course, the main thing that we see is what it looks like. But again, UX is not about what it looks like. So you should engage in UX design whenever user needs are addressed through a digital solution. So again, if you decide that your service needs to rely on a mobile app, you would design a mobile app. If your service needs to rely on a website, you would invest money in the website. And then the outcomes of this activity are to have a user interface that's crafted in a visual form. And then from this stage, you have specific requirements for development. So user stories, specs, and assets, for those of you that are familiar with those terms, would come out of design. So designer would say, this page, the header needs to be this tall, needs to use this color, you need to use these icons for the buttons, and they need to be so many pixels tall and so many pixels wide. Here's where you apply the drop shadow, here's where you don't apply drop shadow, and things of that nature. Plus, the designers would say, when you click on this button, and the condition is that the user has not entered their phone number, you have to prompt them for a phone number. So requirements for software functionality would come out a lot from the design. And also, if you are a developer and you get to work with designers, it's really advisable to have conversations with your designers very early on in the process. Because designers may come up with really crazy and futuristic ways of addressing user needs through an interface, but from the technology perspective, that may be quite a challenge, right? So it could take you 5 months to kind of put a bit of a spark that the designer envisioned in their head, but you may not have 5 months. So having these conversations with the designer in terms of what's possible and how much time it's going to take would be really good. And also, if designers come up with really crazy ways to solve solutions or really novel ways to solve solutions, that may impact how your databases are structured if you're storing information, or what kind of services you need to have access to if you're building a technology solution. So having conversations with designers as early as possible is really highly recommended. So the business value here really is that if you design the new user experience, you're able to address current user needs and user pain points while still focusing on driving business success. So the easiest example of that is e-commerce websites. Your users don't care whether or not you make money as a business, right? Your users just want to get on a website, buy something, get it delivered, and be happy with it. But you as a business, you want your users to buy stuff, and you want them to buy more of that stuff, and you want them to come back. You want them to complete the purchase that they made. Or you want to buy them the item that they added to the shopping cart. So a designer can see what's happening on the user side, what the user wants, and they can look at the business side and what the business wants. And they can help, through the user interface, kind of achieve both goals. So I'm going to be, as a designer, I can make it very easy for you to add things to your cart, and I'm going to give you a bunch of prompts to complete the purchase in a way that's easy and intuitive for you, so that I, as a business, make money, right? So it's kind of seeing both sides and addressing needs and goals of user and the business. And good design will help you do that. And then the final set of activities that I will talk about is validating user experience. And the activities here are heuristic evaluation, expert reviews, and usability testing. So heuristic evaluation and expert reviews are some of the, are quite similar, and the usability testing is taking, kind of getting actual end user input. So when people do heuristic evaluation, they will look at an interface or a website or a mobile app. And when I say an interface, like I always remember, you can do an evaluation of a microwave interface. Is it easy and intuitive to use? My stupid microwave, I can never figure out how to set a clock. Like power goes out, my clock turns off, and it takes me freaking 5 minutes to get those numbers back on. It's so frustrating, and you would think it's a stupid microwave. So a heuristic evaluation requires that experts in user interface design and in usability go through the product or the software or the interface, and they find items on the interface and in the functionality that would be not intuitive to a naive user. So, for example, if a website has 2 buttons that say exit, and clicking one of those buttons takes you to page A, but clicking another button takes you to a page that looks very different, then that would be a confusing experience for the person. I'm clicking the exact type of button, but why is it taking me to 2 different places? Okay? In other cases, you may be clicking a button, save, and you're clicking, you can see that on a lot of old web pages, and nothing happens, right? Like nothing loads, nothing refreshes, and you don't know whether your information was saved, processed, or not. So when we do a heuristic evaluation, we are looking for interface problems and functionality problems that would cause these kinds of confusions and frustrations for your end users. And then we can prioritize and say, well, some of these icons are not very clear or not very intuitive, but that's not a big deal. But when the user's pressing a button to complete their purchase and there's no feedback that they have completed a purchase, that's a major issue. So we're able to prioritize and categorize a lot of the issues that may be leading to negative user experience. And then the developers and business can go fix those issues quickly. Usability testing requires actually using your product or your service with the intended audience. So let's say I have a mobile app that I'm going to launch, and I would take it to the end users and I would ask them to interact with that app, and I would measure and observe how quickly it takes them to complete specific tasks and what they can and cannot accomplish. So that allows me to figure out what it is that's not intuitive in their interface for the intended audience. So when you So when somebody downloads a mobile app on the phone, they typically don't do expert reviews that can be done in several days. And you should do these activities after user interfaces are designed. So when you have, let's say, a new design so the wireframes that a designer created, you can test those interfaces and check if they're intuitive and user-friendly by doing usability testing using kind of a prototype, or even like a paper prototype. So you just print out those screens, you stack them in the way that they would be connected before you code, and you put them in front of the user and you see whether they would understand how to use that product. You can also, you should also do these activities after you change the user interface and make significant revisions to interface or functionality. And again, prior to major launch or release, you want to validate that users will be able to use what you're putting in front of them when they know nothing about the product or service. So the outcomes of heuristic evaluation and usability tests are a prioritized list of issues that will negatively impact user experience. So those issues can be very quickly handed off to developers, and they will say, oh, nothing happens when the user clicks this button. Well, let me go and change some code, and there will be a pop-up message, or the screen will update and will say, you received your order. That's a major but easy fix. And when you do, let's say, usability testing with actual end users, you as a business can start tracking various metrics that are associated with business success. So you can measure usability benchmarks like a system usability score, and it can tell you how overall easy to use your product is. And depending on the score that you get from your end users, you can figure out how much you need to spend on, how much more effort you need to spend on improving usability of your product, and how it compares to a lot of similar services that are available. And you can also measure metrics such as the Net Promoter Score. So how likely are people to use your product, and how likely are they to recommend it to others? Because that significantly correlates with whether or not your business will be successful. So you can start tracking such metrics even as you're doing usability testing. And if you're curious to learn more about this, feel free to come talk to me after the talk, and we'll get into more detail. So the business value of validating user experience is you have a clear roadmap for issues and bugs that you need to work on, and you manage your risk of post-launch failure if you're addressing usability testing before releasing it to the whole world. It's much easier to fix a problem before a major launch than after the launch. Right? After the launch, people have experienced this thing that's horrible and doesn't work, and they're never going to go back and try it again after you fix it. So fix it before you launch. So does this really work? You may be like, yeah, okay, I can kind of understand this, but I don't know if I'm sold on this. So I'll show you more numbers. So businesses that invest in user experience and user-centered design, which is another way to talk about user experience, or another term, have shown that development is shorter by at least 30%, up to 50%, and shorter sometimes and often means cheaper when teams invest in user experience during the concept phase. So instead of figuring out what everything should look like and what everything should work like after you begin development, that takes longer than figuring out those details up front. Because as I said, from the development side, you need to figure out what services you need to use, how your databases need to be built, and if you build the database wrong and you need to redo everything from scratch, that's a lot of work. Majority of bug fixes that come up after release are user interface fixes. So at least 80% of fixes are UI fixes. So if you have clear requirements for what the user interface should look like and how it should work, you can really cut down a lot of the maintenance and fix time and save money if you define user interfaces up front and if you validate them with your end users. Nielsen Norman, again the pioneers in this discipline and in this field, have shown, and they have done work on many, many organizations across many industries, that every dollar that you invest in user experience in the early stages of your project will yield about $100 in return. Their more recent numbers are 1 to 70, but still, that's a big return on the investment. And then, as I was kind of hinting at already, so the cost of fixing issues after you launch will grow exponentially larger than fixing those issues before you launch and at the beginning of your project. So if you launch a product and it's really hard to use and it's not very usable, people will not come back to it. So you have already lost that potential user base. Or they will start speaking negatively about your product, and that will influence how others perceive your solution, even though you may go and fix a lot of those issues after you have kind of introduced it to people. So fix those things early, and especially before you launch, to make sure that you don't suffer from this problem. All right, so the last part is kind of talking about how to find the right people to help you do this, especially when you cannot afford to bring on a full-time UX person. And let me just say that there's not a single person who could do this, all of these activities really well. None of those characteristics really don't exist in one person. So first, you need to let developers stick to code and bring other people to help you with these user experience activities. So I cannot resist. So when developers design, we end up with things that look like this, or like this. And this may function beautifully. It may do a lot of really complicated, awesome things for your business or your operation. But I can tell you, like, this is not easy to learn. This is not intuitive just by looking at it, right? And if you ever say, oh, we're just going to train people on how to use this, you have failed. Nobody wants to sit in no training. Even the tutorial screens on a lot of mobile apps, nobody looks through them. They skip, 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 right? Training is not the answer. So developers should stick to code and do a lot of awesome things, but don't design things. And then, as I already hinted at, don't look for an expert who can do everything. So if you're looking for a user experience person who also codes, scratch them off your list right away, because that will be the best solution for what you're really looking for. And if people say, oh, I can do all of it, okay, they can't. They can do all of it to some degree, but they won't do as an awesome job as they could if they specialized in design or user research or pure development of interfaces. So we call these people who say that they can do all of it uxicorns. They don't exist. They really don't. Even though they will put on their resume, oh, I can do design and research and testing and I was recently at a conference for user experience professionals, and one of the leaders in this space gave a really cool talk, and he covered the topic of kind of how the profession is evolving, and that there are so many evolving and ever-changing titles. So this discipline is fairly young, and there are a lot of changes that are happening. And if you search for jobs on some place, or if you're even getting candidates, or like seeing people kind of update their profiles on LinkedIn, you will see a bunch of titles that look like this and more. And so what I will caution you about, when you are looking for help on a particular problem, and you know what kind of activities you want to do, I will tell you what qualities you should look for in those applications, rather than what title a person has on their resume. Because, again, this field is ever-changing, and God knows what we will call ourselves in a year or two. So, user researcher would be the plainest title for kind of the first activity in this process, so understanding the current user experience. Again, you do interviews, observations, contextual inquiries. So you want somebody who has a background in social sciences, such as psychology or sociology, or even anthropology. You want somebody who has experience interviewing, observing people, and doing specific tasks or engaging in specific activities. And then also this person should have experience analyzing qualitative data, summarizing the data, and presenting those results. And even your typical undergraduate, who may be an honor student and may have done some research in research labs on campus, if they have these qualifications, they may be very easily, they may transfer those skills very easily to your business problem. that you're trying to solve. Like, hey, do people know how to use this app? They could observe them how they are interacting with an app or a website. To design user experience, you really want somebody who is a designer, and they may call themselves multiple things. Some of those are UX, UI, or interaction designer. So here the person is creating kind of the underlying structure of the software, which would be the information architecture, wireframing, and applying visual design. And I really highly recommend that if you are to look for a designer, is that you're looking for somebody who came out or is currently in a design program. A lot of people call themselves designers because they took an art class and they really liked it and they can do something in Photoshop. They may be talented and they may be creative, but I have found from working with a lot of designers that those people really cannot solve problems about how to make something user-friendly and intuitive. That's a big challenge. So look for somebody coming from a design program. You want to see a portfolio of previous work that this person has done, so you can gauge to some degree if they're stuck in the 90s, the 2000s, or if they are thinking creatively and their design is modern. You want them to be able to walk through a particular project and explain decisions that they made in terms of their design. Why did they use specific colors? Why is the font difficult or easy to read? If a designer cannot explain why they made those choices, then they're not a good designer. Okay? They also should have experience in a relevant technology platform. So what I have seen, even with the colleagues that work with me at our company, if they specialize a lot in web design, they have a hard time creating mobile interfaces because that's just a very different space. And how you use visual elements, they have to think about it very differently. So if you're building a mobile app, you should look for people who have some experience creating specifications and annotations for developers, because that will make developers' lives so much easier. And then finally, validating the user experience that you are getting ready to launch. So here, there's a split between user researcher and UX designer. As a researcher, I will say you would probably should look for a researcher, but some designers may be able to do these tasks as well. So here the activities are heuristic evaluation, expert review, and usability testing. And this person should have background in human factors, or ergonomics, psychology, cognitive sciences, and maybe some design. They should have experience conducting these activities, and they should definitely have experience classifying and prioritizing usability issues that you may have. Because as I said, if there are non-intuitive features on your website or your mobile app, you want to know which ones you need to go address first. And if this person is not able to tell you that, then they're kind of useless. So, four-step process. The last would be you actually build a solution, you release it, and then you should go and validate or test again. Are your users happy with what you have launched? Or now that they have the solution, what else could you do on top of it to make their user experience even better than what it is? So it's not that you create a user experience, you launch it, and you're done with it. You check it off your list. It's something that you should actively keep checking on, because user needs change over time as they get used to a technology, right? You download an app, it does something that you really like, and then a couple months later, you're like, oh, this is really awesome, but I wish that it also did this other thing, right? So if you don't go and check in with your users from time to time, you won't really know what that other thing may be. So success, and especially in the startup space where you have limited time, limited money, limited resources, is that you should use the right people at the right time in your process or your product release, and you should use them for the right tasks. And if you do that well, you should be good. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Yes, please.
I really enjoyed your talk, Evelina. My question is, how would you define the relation or difference between user experience and user feedback? Like the user experience field is how we develop user feedback field, or is it different?
I would say that, so to repeat the question, how do you distinguish or how are user feedback and user experience related? So I would say that user feedback is part of, it's input into how you craft user experience. So if you're hearing from people, I can't complete my purchase, or you see that people are abandoning their shopping cart without completing a purchase, or if they're saying, I really like the service, but that's something for you to consider and possibly investigate if you're doing interviews with them. Like, oh, so how do you like this feature, and like, how do you get something done around that feature without actually saying, what do you want me to go fix?
So user feedback is like one is the user experience.
Yes, it's one of the ways to get insight into what the user experience is. Yes.
You mentioned Southwest Airlines and being able to cancel a flight. I mean, not even without penalty. But many, like American, you get hit by a lot of money, cancel or even change. But it seems like a trade-off. Obviously, you better do like Southwest. They must end up losing money by having seats unfilled or been canceled. How do you decide that trade-off?
Right, so that's a question for the business themselves, right? So they have had these conversations internally. As a person representing the users, I can go to the business and say, here are the things that the users really like. Here's where there's value for them. Here's how you can position yourself as a brand. Here's ways that you can do it. And then the business can take those insights and they can say, well, here's what makes sense to us financially, here's what doesn't make sense to us financially. So it's not, the user experience discipline doesn't dictate how the business should run, right? So it should be definitely an informed decision by both sides, right?
I hope United is a UX person.
Yeah, United. And I used to fly them a lot because it had direct flights to where I was visiting. And it was really horrible because they would charge you $200 to change a flight. Just not cool. And you didn't know that until you actually had a situation where you needed to change that flight. So go Southwest. Anybody else?
All right, if you're gonna stick around, a few minutes.
I'll be here if you want to come talk to me. I'd love to connect. I love working with a lot of different people. Love to network. Please come say hi. And thank you so much.